confirmed that its leader, Kim Jong-un, will be meeting soon with Russia's Vladimir Putin. The regime hasn't confirmed the date or the venue for the summit, but it's understood to be happening this month in Vladivostok. The U.S. has decided it will no longer give waivers to countries like South Korea to buy oil from Iran. That means some Korean companies will have to find new sources of some oil products, which will be more expensive. And Finance Minister Hong Nam-ki says creditors of Asiana Airlines are going to inject almost $1.5 billion to help the company through its liquidity crisis. Also, support will be extended to regions struggling economically for another 2 years. It's 4 o'clock here in Seoul. Thanks for tuning in to our afternoon newscast. I'm Devin Whiting. North Korea confirmed this morning that Chairman Kim Jong-un will visit Russia to meet with President Putin. Still no details, though, on the exact date or venue. Oh Jung-hee has our top story.
Confirmation from Pyongyang that the North Korea-Russia summit is happening soon. Pyongyang state-run Korean Central News Agency reported Tuesday that North Korean leader Kim Jong-un will soon visit Russia on the invitation of President Vladimir Putin. It added that there will be a summit between Kim and Putin. Pyongyang's announcement on the summit comes at the same time as the Kremlin's confirmation that Kim and Putin will meet by the end of April. The upcoming Pyongyang-Moscow summit is the first of its kind in 8 years. In 2011, Kim's late father and the former North Korean leader Kim Jong-il met with then Russian President Dmitry Medvedev. The announcements from both Pyongyang and Moscow have not provided details about when and where the summit will happen. But North Korea's advance team, led by Pyongyang's protocol chief Kim Chang-sun, has been spotted checking Vladivostok since last week. And seeing where they've been visiting, various media outlets are reporting that the Kim-Putin summit will take place at the Far Eastern Federal University, located on Russky Island off the coast of Vladivostok. NK News reports that preparations are underway there, with the flags of North Korea and Russia lined up in one of the buildings. Reports say Kim Jong-un will be heading over to Russia's Vladivostok using a special train on Wednesday. And Kim will be staying in Russia until Friday, even though President Putin will leave the country on Friday for a One Belt, One Road summit in China. Kim will tour around where his father had visited 8 years ago and possibly visit the world-renowned Mariinsky Theater, a public aquarium, and Russia's Pacific Fleet headquarters, according to Japan-based Kyodo News Agency. Oh Jung-hee, Arirang News.
Meanwhile, South Korean President Moon Jae-in in Kazakhstan met with that country's leaders to talk about bringing peace to the Korean Peninsula and to Central Asia. For President Moon, the focus was on denuclearization and Kazakhstan's example in giving up its own weapons. Our presidential office correspondent Shin Se-min reports.
President Moon Jae-in used the backdrop of an affluent Kazakhstan to press home his point that a non-nuclear North Korea would mean a better life for the North Korean people. Speaking with the founder of Kazakhstan, former President Nursultan Nazarbayev, President Moon said North Korea should follow Kazakhstan's lead and choose economic prosperity over nuclear weapons. Touching upon Kazakhstan's GDP, which accounts for around 70% of the combined GDP of Central Asia, President Moon said the country was able to achieve that because it voluntarily handed over its weapons.
카자흐스탄은 자발적인 비핵화를 통해서 경제 성장을 이룬 그런 경험을 가지고 있기 때문에 우리 한반도의 비핵화 문제에 있어서 큰 영감을 주고 있습니다.
Kazakhstan also gave its full backing to President Moon's denuclearization drive. Nazarbayev told President Moon that delaying the denuclearization process is only going to make things more difficult and pledged to declare his support on the international stage if necessary. Earlier, during a separate meeting with Kazakhstan's current president, Kassym-Jomart Tokayev, President Moon sought support for a nuclear-free Korean peninsula, to which Tokayev responded that his country will continue to fully back peace in any way possible. Kazakhstan once held the world's fourth largest nuclear stockpiles with over 1,400 warheads, but relinquished all of its Soviet-era weapons by mid-1995 and absorbed a policy of non-proliferation. Throughout his Central Asian tour, the president has been securing support from key partners of his new northern policy. But realizing diplomatic and economic benefits with these nations may take some time, as it is closely linked with the speed of denuclearization talks. Shin Se-min, Arirang News, Nur Sultan.
China's new warships, including nuclear submarines and destroyers, were on display in a fleet review held Tuesday near the port city of Qingdao. The review was to celebrate the 70th anniversary of the founding of the Navy of the People's Liberation Army. Warships from more than 10 countries joined the fleet review, and more than 60 countries sent naval delegations. South Korea sent a 2,500-ton missile frigate called the Gyeonggi. North Korea also sent a ship helmed by Admiral Kim Jong-un, commander of the Korean People's Army Naval Force. South Korea's ruling Democratic Party and 3 minor opposition parties have designated 2 key reform bills as fast-track legislation. Their floor leaders had agreed on Monday to fast-track bills on electoral reform to boost proportional representation and to create a body to investigate high-ranking government and public officials. The fast-track measure prevents bills that fail to get bipartisan support from being stuck in Parliament for too long. The main opposition Liberty Korea Party, which is not part of the agreement, has vowed to resist, saying the parties involved in the deal have given up on parliamentary democracy. A strong earthquake has hit the Philippine island of Samar just a day after a deadly quake hit near the capital, Manila. The U.S. Geological Survey says the quake of magnitude 6.4 struck the southern part of the country. No casualties or damage have been reported at this point. This comes a day after a 6.1 magnitude quake struck the Philippines' main island of Luzon, leaving 11 people dead and 20 injured. The South Korean table tennis champion Ryu Seung-min has been elected to the executive committee of the International Table Tennis Federation. Ryu won gold at the 2004 Olympics. He was elected unanimously on Monday at the federation's annual meeting in Budapest for a term that runs through 2024. He is the first Korean elected onto the ITTF executive committee since Han Sang-guk in 2008. Ryu said that his election is even more meaningful because the 2020 World Table Tennis Championships will be held next year in Busan. At the championships, he said he'll try to bring South and North Korea closer together. South Korean boy band BTS have made it onto the Billboard Hot 100 chart, the gold standard in the American music industry. Billboard says on the new chart, to be released Tuesday, U.S. time, they're at number 8 for the song Boy With Love. This is the group's second top 10 song on the Hot 100, and it's the highest charting song for a K-pop group, beating their own Fake Love, which peaked at number 10 in June 2018. This is also they're the first group since the Beatles to get 3 number 1 albums on the Billboard 200 in a single year. South Korea had been exempt from America's sanctions on Iran, meaning it could continue to import Iranian oil. But that is no longer the case. The Trump administration says the sanctions will now apply across the board. EG1 reports.
Turning the screw on Tehran, the U.S. says there will be no extension to the current sanctions waiver on Iranian crude oil.
We're going to zero across the board. We will continue to enforce sanctions and monitor compliance. Any nation or entity interacting with Iran should do its diligence and err on the side of caution.
The U.S. withdrew from the 2015 nuclear deal with Iran in May last year, with President Trump saying the agreement had not stopped Iran from developing its nuclear and missile programs. However, 8 countries, including South Korea and Japan, were given exemptions from Washington's sanctions on Iran last November. The 180-day grace period comes to an end on May 2nd, and despite the country's efforts, the State Department said on Monday that President Trump had made the decision to deny Tehran its principal source of revenue. During his press briefing Monday, Pompeo also touched upon concerns of potential market instability.
And we've been working with major oil-producing countries to ensure the market has sufficient volume to minimize the impact on pricing. Both the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia and the United Arab Emirates have assured us they will ensure an appropriate supply for the markets. And of course, the United States is now a significant producer as well.
Pompeo reiterated that maximum pressure will continue until Iran ends its pursuit of nuclear weapons, stops developing ballistic missiles and sponsoring terrorism, as well as halt the arbitrary detention of U.S. citizens. While South Korea had already cut its Iranian crude oil imports to zero, it relies heavily on condensate or ultralight oil, which is technically not the main target of U.S. sanctions. The news is likely to take a serious toll on many of South Korea's small and medium enterprises in the industry. South Korea's Foreign Affairs Ministry says it has been in talks with Washington on various levels for an extension, and it will continue to relay its stance to the U.S. right until the deadline. 이지원, Arirang News.
Now, the ban on Iranian oil is expected to hit South Korea's petrochemical industry, which relies on Iran as a source of ultra-light oil or condensate. Our Kim Da-mi tells us more.
The South Korean oil industry has been preparing for the worst-case scenario, a complete ban on Iran's oil exports. Since as far back as 2012, when Iran was previously subject to U.S. sanctions, South Korean oil companies have been gradually decreasing their dependence on Iranian oil by seeking alternative importers. The country's crude oil imports from Iran for the first 2 months of 2019 totaled only 61% of the amount imported during the same period the previous year. Domestic oil companies, including Hyundai Oil Bank and SK Energy, have already diversified their crude oil supplies. However, there are concerns as the South Korean petrochemical industry heavily relies on Iranian condensate. Condensate, an ultra-light form of crude oil, is used for producing naphtha, the basic raw material for many petrochemical products, including clothing and footwear. In addition, South Korea's oil industry has favored Iranian condensate, which is between $2 and $6 cheaper per barrel than condensate from other countries.
There's a limited number of countries that can replace Iran and its oil, like Qatar, Norway, and Japan. Because of the short supply, rising prices of oil with condensate will be inevitable.
While companies will now seek alternative sources of condensate, experts note that importing naphtha instead of condensate can be one option, as there are more countries willing to sell naphtha. Kim Da-mi, Arirang News.
The markets are closed now in Korea, and that means it's time to get some expert analysis of the stock market action and a lot more. On the line is Daniel Yu, head of the global research team at Kium Research Center. Thanks for joining us this afternoon, Mr. Yu.
Thank you for having me.
Well, on Wall Street, we're waiting for some earnings from some of the big players, so overnight the indexes were a mixed bag. Take us through the global markets today.
Sure. If you look at the time period right now, it is a earnings season. The corporate earnings of the U.S. are coming through, and most of the numbers are coming through better than expected. In fact, 78% of the S&P 500 listed companies posted earnings per share higher than market consensus, according to the U.S. market researcher FactSet. Earnings forecasts for listed companies in S&P 500 were also revised upwards since the first quarter. It is estimated that the operating profit of S&P 500 listed companies will decline only 3.9% year-on-year, versus about a month ago, the estimation was about 4.3% decline year-on-year. So, therefore, the earnings are revised up a little bit with the earnings numbers coming through. However, though, the Chinese market seems to be taking a breather. It's been going down in 2 days in a row. Despite the strong economic numbers coming through. As we know, the first quarter numbers came at 6.4% growth rate of GDP versus market estimation of 6.2 to 6.3%. Most of the numbers in various economic numbers are coming through better than expected. However, though, the Chinese market has been the strongest market since the beginning of the year, rising over 30% YTD. That taking some corrections is a necessity before it takes off again with better earnings projections coming through. We believe, though, U.S. NASDAQ market will continue to do well over this period of taking breather. Main reason for that is because continuation of low interest rate environment that will result into continuation of the earnings growth for the major growth stocks in U.S. Particularly the IT segments are doing very well. And in terms of share price movement, it seems that the NASDAQ is much more outperforming the S&P 500.
Got it. Well, last week we saw the end of a remarkable winning streak here in Korea on the Kospi. How's it shaping up this week?
Yes. After the market had been reached well above 2,200 level of Kospi, Kospi is making some corrections or taking a breather. The key factor is that, though, Kospi has a cheapest valuation amongst all the Asian countries or the global scale. So therefore, despite the Chinese market taking some corrections quite heavily in the last 2 days, Kospi seems to remain intact. Kospi today was up 0.17%, and Kosdaq was flat, declining slightly by 0.08%. As I said earlier, the valuations are very cheap for Korea. It is the fair value based on our residual income models estimate that 2,300 level of Kospi is more reasonable than the current level of 2,200. Clearly, the Kospi is undervalued with a price to book of 0.9 times level. Of course, it needs some more catalyst in order for the market to go up. We believe that there are three factors we need to look at. Number one is the much easier monetary policy, including from U.S. and China and Korea. And second factor will be the U.S.-China dispute settlement in terms of the trade agreement. And then third factor will be the OECD leading indicator that seems to be bottoming out, and we need that number to turn around in the future. So these factors does happen, then the Kospi will probably move up higher. But for the time being, it's taking a breather.
Okay. Well, now we have to talk about oil prices. Yesterday, the U.S. saying it'll not give any more waivers to countries to import oil from Iran, and by definition, that's going to hit supplies. And immediately after that announcement, we saw prices rise sharply. Are they going to keep going up?
Well, we think that the oil price might be moving up in the short term. The reason for that is because still the sanction issues remains, and also Iran's threatening that they will close down the waterway for the shipping to the China and Korea. So if that happens, then the U.S. might retaliate in terms of using military actions. That could result into higher oil price if that happens. I think that most of the people are taken by surprise that the Trump administration have said that it won't renew any waivers in regards to the Iran oil purchases. So that is affecting clearly the prices of the oil. Yes, if the price continues to go up higher to $70 level or even higher, that will have negative impact globally with the higher energy prices, and that will increase the inflation numbers, and which means that the central banks cannot lower interest rate because of the inflation worries. However, though, we think that the production level that will come in much heavier from U.S. side with the shale gas production. Also, the Saudi Arabia as well as the UAE have said that they will increase the production capacities, production numbers, will allow the oil price to probably go down in the future. We think that U.S. have ample room to increase the production and be able to control the oil price at a much lower level than current prices. And because of the break-even point of the shale gas companies are probably around $40. So anything above 40, well above 50 is a reasonable number for U.S. to continue to keep having a competitive edge relative to China. So oil price remaining low is an important issue. We think that the oil price will settle down probably towards the second half of this year.
Okay, we'll keep watching that number, of course, but that's where we'll have to leave it today, Mr. Yu. Thanks, as always, for your insights.
Thank you very much.
Now, the South Korean government held a meeting this morning to discuss ways to boost the competitiveness of local industries. One of the main things was a plan by creditors to support Asiana Airlines, which is going through a major cash crunch. Go Dun-hee reports.
South Korea's finance minister says the creditors of Asiana Airlines plan to inject around $1.4 billion to ease its parent company's liquidity crisis. Attending a meeting of various economy-related ministers on Tuesday, Hong Nam-gi said creditors led by the state-funded Korea Development Bank will buy around $438 million worth of perpetual bonds and set a credit limit of $700 million. Credit limit means the maximum amount of credit that lenders will extend to a debtor for a particular line of credit. This comes after creditors accepted Kumo Asiana Group's self-rescue plan earlier this month, which included selling its flagship Asiana Airlines. Hong added the firm will strive to improve its business conditions and push for merger and acquisitions by the end of the year. Another big issue besides Korea's second biggest air carrier was updating the public about the government's so-called crisis zones for industry and employment. These zones refer to areas that rely on certain industries such as shipbuilding, where many people can face layoffs if that specific field struggles. The government has been providing financial and job support to the regions. Hong said the government will extend the appointed period until May 2021 in 5 regions, including Hojae City in Gyeongsang-namdo Province. Ministers also discussed ways to revitalize South Korea's shipbuilding industry. Specific measures include increasing the number of professional personnel in the field and providing more support in terms of refund guarantees. Ko Dun-hee, Arirang News.
Its highly anticipated first foldable smartphone was scheduled to hit shelves on Friday in the United States, but Samsung Electronics has delayed the launch. The company says it'll announce a new release date in the coming weeks. Kim Yo-sun reports.
Samsung Electronics is delaying the public rollout of its first foldable smartphone amid controversies over screen defects. The smartphone maker made the announcement on its website Monday without providing a new release date of its Galaxy Fold. It explained they will run further internal tests and announce the release date in the coming weeks. Samsung was initially planning to begin sales from this Friday in the US, next Friday in Europe, and from mid-May in South Korea. The decision follows a series of reviews by US media that the Galaxy Fold, which will retail for nearly $2,000, had screen malfunctions in its test version. The Wall Street Journal posted a mocking review of the device, which led to widespread criticism against the media outlet for not focusing on the review itself. Other international media outlets supported Samsung's decision, saying releasing a fragile product could not only affect its brand image but also the entire foldable screen industry. Bloomberg also explained that the incident draws parallels with Samsung's extensive recall of its Galaxy Note 7 in 2016, following numerous reports its batteries overheated and sometimes burst into flames. Kim Yo-sun, Arirang News.
Now, Korean pop music is climbing the charts around the world, and Korean movies are big too. One other way the Korean wave is branching out, as our Kan Hyung-woo explains, is in cosmetics for men.
Men's grooming products made in South Korea are poised to take the world by storm.
I don't see why not. If women get to use all the beauty products, why can't men? We like to be handsome. We like to show ourselves off.
According to researchandmarkets.com, the global male grooming products market is expected to reach $78.6 billion by 2023, growth of about 5% every year, while the domestic market is already surging. The men's grooming section has seen its sales go up by 40% a year for the past 3 years in a row, showing how fast the market is growing. As for the advantages of men's K-beauty products, users point to their cost-effectiveness.
I think it's a lot more affordable than what's available out there. Like, you can find things for as low as $7 sometimes, and on top of that, the ingredients are always quite great and unique.
To reach beyond Asia, experts say it's important to develop strategies targeting specific regions.
If the companies want to get into European or American markets, they should focus on adjusting their products for those skin types. They also need to come up with certain qualities to fit the needs in those regions.
K-beauty products are already hugely popular among female consumers around the world. According to the Ministry of SMEs and Startups, South Korea's exports in cosmetic products grew by 25% in 2018 compared to the previous year, reaching a total value of $4.6 billion, making it seem likely that men's K-beauty is set for similar success. 강영우, Arirang News.
That brings us to the end of this newscast. Thank you for watching. More live news coming your way at 7 p.m. Korea time.
Planning a self-guided tour in Korea? We'll let you peek at the most beautiful hours from dawn to night in Korea.